Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe my channel. Ryan's hand was still in the air when Leo started crying, a sharp broken sound that cut straight through the candlelit dining room and bounced off the tall windows, the polished mahogany table, the glass-fronted cabinets full of my mother's holiday china. One red mark was already blooming on my son's soft cheek under the warm amber light. The smell of rosemary, butter and burnt sugar turned sour in my nose. My brother leaned back in his chair with his jaw clenched and his cufflinks flashing, as if striking an 11-month-old baby over a grabby little hand was something a reasonable man could defend. My mother froze with her crystal wineglass halfway to her mouth. My father's fork stopped over his plate. Paige, my cousin, had her phone up before Leo's second cry. Ethan pushed back his chair so hard it scraped across the stone floor. And then Ryan looked at me and said, "See? This is exactly why she shouldn't have custody." For one clean, silent second I understood everything. My name is Claire Elise Marlowe Bennett. I'm 34. And this is the story of how my brother slapped my baby at Christmas dinner. My family laughed when I fought back and I took apart everything they built with the evidence they never realized I already had. I was on my feet before my chair had fully stopped moving. Leo was in his high chair beside me, his tiny fists opening and closing, tears tracking hot and quick down his face. Ryan had risen too, not because he felt shame but because he wanted height. He'd always wanted height. Even when we were children he used doorways and staircases and the top step of the back terrace to look down at me while he lied. That night he planted both hands on the table and leaned forward, broad shoulders tight beneath his navy cashmere sweater, the picture of offended dignity. "He grabbed me," he said too loudly for the room and for Paige's phone. "What was I supposed to do?" "You were supposed to act like an adult," I said. My voice came out lower than I felt. Flat. Controlled. Ryan gave a short laugh that showed no humor. "He was pulling on my watch. He is a baby. He needs discipline now, Claire, or he'll turn into one of those children nobody can stand." Leo cried harder when I lifted him, his little body trembling against my chest. I could feel the heat in his cheek through the cotton of his holiday romper. Tiny green velvet trees. My mother had picked it out. She'd cried when she gave it to me 2 weeks earlier and said, "Our first Christmas with Leo. We have to make it perfect." What she meant I knew now was usable. "Claire," Ethan said, holding his hands out the way men do when they want to look reasonable in front of witnesses, "just give him a second. You're escalating." I turned my head and looked at my husband. My almost ex-husband, though my family didn't know that I'd already filed the first draft of the papers with Miriam Sloane's office and was waiting for the right morning to serve him. Ethan stood near the end of the table in a charcoal blazer, one hand open, one hand braced against the chair he'd shoved back. His face had gone pale around the mouth. Not guilty pale. Not horrified pale. Exposed pale. He wasn't upset that Ryan had hit our son. He was upset that Ryan had done it too soon. My mother finally set down her wineglass on the linen runner with a precise little click. Helena Marlowe never slammed anything. Her cruelty preferred soft landings. Her cream silk blouse caught the chandelier light. Her diamond studs flashed when she turned toward me with practiced sadness already settling over her features. "Claire," she said gently, "no one is saying Ryan handled that well. You just watched him hit my baby." Her mouth tightened at the word hit. "Do not start using inflammatory language." "Inflaw." "Claire, come on," Paige cut in from beside the sideboard, phone still raised, red polished nails wrapped around it. It was a tap. I looked at her. "You're recording this." She lifted one shoulder. "Given your history lately, I think that's smart." There was the second blade. My father folded his napkin and laid it beside his plate. Charles Marlowe was 68 and had spent most of his adult life turning silence into currency. Men at banks and club lunches mistook his calm for depth. I had made that mistake too when I was younger. But there was nothing deep about him. He just liked leaving other people to drown in the noise he allowed. "We asked everyone here tonight," he said, "because this can't continue." The room seemed to sharpen around the edges. Silver flatware. Wax strips on ivory tapers. The glossy family photographs lined along the console table. The old oil portrait of my grandmother above the fireplace, watching all of us with a face that used to intimidate me and now just made me tired. Ryan dragged a hand down his jaw and took his chance. "You've been unstable for months." I shifted Leo higher on my shoulder. He was hiccuping now, those small wounded breaths babies take after a hard cry, and I rubbed my hand over his back in slow circles. Careful, I said. See. Ryan snapped, looking around the table. That tone. That threat. Everybody sees it. You slapped a baby. He scratched my face. He touched your watch, Ryan. He took one step toward me. Ethan moved too, not to shield me but to block angles. Paige circled slightly to her left, making sure she had all of it. My Aunt Moira at the far end of the table had lowered her eyes to her plate in the way cowards do when they want plausible deniability later. My mother pressed her fingertips together so delicately they barely touched. Ryan's wife, Tessa, stared at the cranberry sauce in front of her like it contained answers. Even then I noticed that. Even then I noticed she wasn't shocked. She was scared. Ethan exhaled through his nose and finally said the line they had obviously rehearsed. Claire, you need to hand Leo to your mother. I just looked at him. My mother rose halfway from her chair, palms out, every inch the benevolent matriarch in a beautifully lit nightmare. Sweetheart, let me take him while you calm down. And there was not concern. Procedure. I could almost see the outline of the script. Ryan provokes. I react. Ethan positions himself as the patient father. My mother offers rescue. Paige records my episode. By morning I'm unstable. Aggressive. The family foundation I'd been auditing on maternity leave suddenly has a clean explanation for any internal complaints I might raise. Concerned husband. Concerned grandparents. Difficult daughter spiraling after childbirth. They had mistaken composure for weakness for so long that when they finally moved against me, they still chose theater. I kissed Leo's hair and turned slightly away from the phone so Paige got less of his face. No, I said. Ethan's voice hardened. Claire. No. Ryan gave a disbelieving laugh. You hear how she talks to people now? I looked at him again. His cheekbone was already reddening, not from anything I'd done, but from where Leo's tiny nails must have dragged when Ryan yanked his own arm away. He would use that too. He would call it an attack. He would let them say postpartum rage as if the phrase itself had legal force. My mother drew in a breath that sounded rehearsed. We've all been worried. The missed appointments. The isolation. The emails to finance. That almost made me smile. The emails to finance, I repeated. Yes, my father said. Since you want to pretend this is just about dinner, let's not. You've been digging through foundation accounts you no longer oversee. You've been making accusations. You've been forwarding confidential files to yourself. Which is theft, Ryan added. Actually. I turned toward him fully then, Leo in my arms, and the room went still. Ryan had always been at his boldest when he thought numbers were on his side. Board votes. Family dinners. Charity galas. Golf foursomes. Any setting where he could borrow authority from furniture and men. What exactly did I steal? I asked. He blinked once. Don't play games. No. Tell me. Ethan stepped in smoothly. Claire, this isn't helping. Then answer me, Ethan. He glanced at my father first. Small move. Fast. Most people would have missed it. Ryan pulled a folded packet from the sideboard where apparently they'd prepared their props. He slapped it down on the table with a little too much force for someone claiming calm concern. Several pages slid across the linen. Bank transfer screenshots. Internal ledger entries. My name typed neatly in the approval field on 3 donor disbursement records. $382,000, Ryan said. Moved through a dormant reserve account. Paige lowered her phone for the first time, but only because the script had reached its accusation beat and she wanted to watch my face. My mother said, we wanted to give you the opportunity to tell the truth before this becomes uglier. I looked down at the packet. The fonts were right. The formatting was close. The transaction dates had been chosen carefully too, spread over 6 weeks, hidden inside year-end grant distributions when audit fatigue set in and staff went on vacation. Thoughtful work. Sloppy in the middle but thoughtful at the edges. Ethan mistook my silence for impact. If you cooperate, he said, softening his voice, we can handle this privately. We can work out something safe for Leo. Structured visits. Support. There are moments when betrayal arrives like thunder, dramatic and impossible to miss. And then there are moments when it lands with the quiet precision of a stamp on official paper. That was one of them. Structured visits. Support. He had practiced that phrase somewhere without me. Ryan crossed his arms and leaned back, triumphant too early. You don't get to scream and hit people because life didn't go the way you planned. The room shifted toward him. Toward his version. My mother lowered her lashes. My father stared at the fake bank packet as if even he were saddened by what had happened. Paige lifted her phone again. Aunt Moira finally found her courage and murmured, "For Leo's sake, Claire." Leo made a small, exhausted sound against my shoulder and grabbed at the gold chain around my neck. My whole body wanted movement. Violence. Not wild violence. Clean violence. The animal certainty of putting distance between my child and the hand that had hit him. But anger would have been oxygen for them. That was the point of the room. The point of the lighting. The point of the witnesses. So I did the one thing none of them wanted. I walked to my chair. I sat down carefully. I adjusted Leo's blanket over his legs. Then I reached for my water glass and took one slow sip. The silence that followed was absolute. Ryan's forehead creased. My mother's fingers stilled around her stemware. Ethan went motionless. I set the glass down and said, "Are you done performing?" Not a question. A notice. Ryan barked out a laugh. "You think this is a joke?" I think," I said evenly, "that if Paige is going to record the evening, she should make sure she gets all of it." Paige's face changed first. Only slightly. Her eyes flicked to Ethan. Ethan's jaw flexed. My mother sat down very slowly, like someone lowering herself onto thin ice. I held Leo close and looked at each of them in turn. "Please continue," I said. "I want a complete record." 3 weeks earlier, on a gray Thursday morning, Vanessa Cole had shown up at my apartment wearing oversized sunglasses and a camel coat that still smelled faintly of Ethan's cologne. I hadn't expected her. At that point, Vanessa existed in my life as a pattern more than a person. A series of polished mentions in family office emails, clean press releases from the Marlowe House Foundation, and 2 lipstick-smudged hotel invoices I had printed from a reimbursement folder Ethan thought I never saw. She was 31, the foundation's director of communications, and exactly the kind of woman my mother described as effortless, with a softness in her voice that meant dangerous. When I opened my door that morning, she stood in the hallway of my Brooklyn Heights building holding a slim black umbrella and a manila envelope, her mouth stripped of color. "I need 10 minutes, she said. I should have closed the door. A month earlier I might have. But Leo was napping, the apartment was quiet except for the radiator ticking under the windows. And Vanessa looked less like a mistress arriving to make a scene than a witness who had just understood she might be next. "You have 7, I told her. She gave one quick nod and came inside. I didn't offer coffee. She didn't ask. I sat at the oak table by the window and she remained standing for a second, glancing at the framed ultrasound photo on the shelf and the folded play mat in the corner, before finally taking the chair opposite me. "I know about me and Ethan," she said. "Good." Her throat moved. "I didn't come here to apologize. That's honest." She slid the envelope across the table. Inside were printouts, calendar invites, expense approvals, 1 email chain, 2 screenshots of text messages. At the top of the stack, a draft memo with no letterhead, titled Temporary Emergency Parenting Safeguards. My fingers went cold then, a quieter version of what happened in that dining room weeks later. I read the first paragraph. It described me as volatile, sleep-deprived, suspicious, and increasingly fixated on non-existent financial misconduct. It recommended supervised contact pending evaluation. There was no date on the draft. But Ethan's edits were all over it. I had lived beside that man for 6 years. I knew the shape of his language the way some people know music. "Where did you get this?" I asked. Vanessa's laugh was short and bitter. "From the folder he asked me to polish." I looked up. "He said it was precautionary," she said. "He said you'd been spiraling, that the family was afraid you were going to do something reckless with donor accounts, and if this turned ugly they needed clean language ready." I believed him for about 2 days. Why stop? Because then Ryan started sending me vendor names I'd never heard of and asking me to backfill campaign descriptions for payments that had already gone out. Because your mother wanted me to prepare media language for a private family health matter before any family health matter had happened. Because Ethan asked me to say I'd seen you behaving erratically at a board luncheon I was never even at. She reached into her coat pocket and placed her phone on the table. And because I found out he was setting me up. She unlocked the phone, opened a folder and turned it toward me. More screenshots. This time between Ethan and Ryan. Need Vanessa to stay useful until after year-end. If anything blows up, comms approved the outreach vendors, so the paperwork points to her first. Ryan had replied with a thumbs up and a message that said, Claire's too emotional to see the board angle. Christmas will take care of the rest. I read it twice. Vanessa said, he told me he was leaving you. I kept my face neutral. I know how that sounds. It sounds ordinary. Her chin lifted a fraction. What he actually meant was that he planned to take your son, say you were unstable, let the family close ranks, and leave me holding the foundation mess if anyone came looking. Outside my window, a delivery truck hissed at the curb. Somewhere upstairs a child ran across a floor. In the apartment next door someone laughed at something on television. Normal life kept going. It always does, even when the center of yours quietly rearranges itself. You came here because you're scared, I said. Yes. And because you want immunity. Yes. I folded the papers back into the envelope. I can't give you immunity. I didn't ask for that. No, I said. You asked for usefulness. Vanessa looked at me for the first time without performance. Can you protect me if I tell you everything? Probably. She leaned back and exhaled shakily. Then I'll tell you everything. That was the real beginning. Over the next 11 weeks, while my family told people I seemed tired and Ethan played the wounded husband so faithfully he could have won awards for lighting and restraint, I built a file. Not alone. That part matters. Miriam Sloan took my second call after Vanessa left and my third once she understood I wasn't using shock to make ordinary marital betrayal sound grand. Miriam was 52, silver-haired, exact, and had the unnerving stillness of women who no longer spend a single calorie proving they're the smartest person in the room because the room already knows. She had spent 14 years as a federal prosecutor before building her own firm on Park Avenue. Her voice never rose. Her suits were always dark. Her fountain pens cost more than some people's rent. When I sent her Vanessa's first packet, she called back 23 minutes later and said, "Do not confront anyone. From this point on, assume every room is staged. We build quietly." So I did. I copied Leo's pediatric records. I photographed the reimbursement files Ethan left open on his home office monitor. I exported foundation grant histories I was still legally allowed to review as co-trustee. I met Vanessa twice in the back room of a small cafe on Atlantic Avenue with green subway tile and cracked leather banquettes, where she slid USB drives across the table beneath paper sleeves and pretended to discuss donor messaging. I changed all my private passwords from a borrowed laptop at Miriam's office. I learned which of my old corporate credentials were still active, then deliberately left one in place, a decoy account tied to files Owen Mercer built for me inside a monitored folder. Owen was Miriam's forensic investigator. 44. Former internal audit at a global bank. Quiet in the way men become quiet after years of listening to liars explain numbers. He wore rimless glasses and always smelled faintly of cedar and printer toner. On our first meeting he said, "If they want to frame you digitally, let them touch something that bites back." Then he built me a set of irresistible fake records. Slightly altered ledgers, a transfer summary, draft emails discussing the reserve account Ryan later waved at me over the Christmas turkey. Canary files. Marked. Traced. Every unauthorized access time stamped. When Ethan opened them from my old VPN login on December 11th at 11:42 p.m., Owen texted me one line. He took the bait. After that, I knew Christmas would not be dinner. It would be execution. There's if I timed it correctly. Mine if I didn't. So when Ryan slapped Leo and the room unfolded exactly the way Vanessa's document said it would, I wasn't surprised. Furious, yes. So furious my teeth hurt from how hard I held them apart. But not surprised. Back at the table in that burning little theater they had dressed up as family concern, Ryan recovered first. "What does that even mean?" he demanded. "A complete record." "It means," I said, settling Leo more securely against me, "I'd hate for anyone to miss context. Please subscribe my channel." My mother gave a small, elegant sigh. "Claire, if you're trying to intimidate everyone, it isn't working." I looked at her. No. Her hand went to the pearls at her throat, fingertips resting there like punctuation. You're frightened. I understand that. But creating drama won't change the fact that there are financial documents with your name on them and multiple people here who've watched you become increasingly unstable. Paige nodded along before she remembered she was supposed to be filming. Ethan stood rigid, eyes fixed on me in a way that would have looked loving to strangers and controlling to anyone who had ever lived with him. I set my water glass down with care. Ethan, I said, how many times did you log into my inactive compliance account this month? His face didn't move. His eyes did. Ryan made a scoffing sound. What kind of question is that? The kind with a number attached. Ethan folded his arms. I have no idea what you're talking about. Try 11:42 p.m. on the 11th. My father's attention sharpened a fraction. He hated specifics when he wasn't the one providing them. Claire, Ethan said, too smooth now, you're spiraling into conspiracy. No, I said. I'm narrowing. That landed. Not because the sentence was clever. Because it was calm. I reached into the diaper bag hanging off the side of Leo's chair and took out my phone. Then I took out a second device. An iPad in a black folio case that I'd packed beneath diapers, wipes, and an extra bottle. The motion around the table changed immediately. Ryan straightened. Paige lowered her phone another inch. My mother's nostrils flared once. It was the only tell she never quite mastered. Please, she said, tell me you did not bring some grotesque list of grievances to Christmas Eve. I unlocked the screen. Not grievances. I angled the tablet toward the center of the table and pressed play. The first clip was silent. No commentary. Just video. Wide-angle view of the dining room from the small matte black camera clipped into Leo's stroller frame near the sideboard. Pointed precisely where Owen had told me to point it if I expected a confrontation. The room appeared at table height. White tablecloth. Candlelight. Ryan's wristwatch glinting as Leo, reaching with the unpredictable enthusiasm of babies, grabbed toward it. Ryan's face hardening. His hand rising. The slap. Clear. Cling. Unmistakable. Then my chair scraping back. Then Paige's phone lifting from the hallway entrance exactly 4 seconds after contact. Not before. I let the clip end. No one spoke. Ryan found his voice first, but it came out thinner. That angle doesn't show what happened before. I tapped the screen and replayed the 2 seconds before contact. Leo smiling. Reaching. Ryan's mouth tightening. There, I said. He scratched me. He is 11 months old. My mother tried next. This is disgusting. You planted a camera at family dinner. Yes. At Christmas. Yes. Paige lowered her phone entirely. That's insane. I looked at her. You arrived with your camera app already open. Color moved up her neck. Ethan stepped toward the table. This doesn't prove anything except that everyone here has been walking on eggshells around you for a reason. I nodded once. Good. Let's do the second file. The audio started under the glow of the chandelier. Static first. Then my mother's voice, unmistakable and cool from 3 nights earlier in the small sitting room off the kitchen at my parents' house. Vanessa had placed the recorder in the ceramic ginger jar beside the fireplace after Helena asked her to come over and help shape the mood for Christmas. Ryan's voice came in next. If she bolts before dinner, Ethan needs to keep her here long enough for Paige to get it. My mother. Then do not make it obvious. The baby is the easiest pressure point. He's spoiled already. Ryan, I'm not hurting him. My mother, after a pause long enough to chill the marrow in my bones even now when I remember it. No one said hurt. Just provoke. The room went dead. Tessa made a sound then. Tiny. Involuntary. Her hand flew to her mouth. My father's eyes cut to my mother so sharply it almost looked like principle. Ryan stepped back from the table as if distance could deny audio. Paige whispered, "Oh my God." Helena's face lost color one measured layer at a time. "That recording is illegal," she said. Miriam later told me that guilty people love procedure because it lets them touch something colder than themselves. In that moment I almost admired the instinct. "No," I said. "It isn't." Ethan moved fast, reaching for the tablet. I stood before his fingers touched it. "Don't," I said quietly. He stopped. It was a small thing. But the room felt it. Ryan's voice cracked. "This is manipulated." "By whom?" "By you. By your little lawyer friends. By..." I tapped the screen again. Third file. This one was digital, clean, time-stamped. Owen had prepared it for simplicity. A login report, followed by screen captures of my dormant compliance account accessed from Ethan's company-issued laptop. Then a side-by-side overlay showing the false reserve account packet created inside the decoy folder and later printed from the Foundation office printer outside Ethan's workspace. I swiped slowly. One page. Then another. Then the printer logs. Then the keystroke sequence. Then the external drive attached for 3 minutes on December 12th. Ethan stared at the screen like it had spoken in a language only he could hear. Ryan looked from the tablet to Ethan and back again. What is that? It's called metadata, I said. You should have asked before using my credentials. My father's chair creaked as he sat back hard. That startled me more than the rest. Charles Marlowe did not collapse into chairs. He selected them. My mother found anger now that sorrow had failed her. How dare you trap your husband? I almost laughed. How dare he build a custody packet before speaking to me once? No one moved. I opened the 4th file because after the first 3, mercy would have been wasteful. A screenshot of Ethan's email to the family's longtime outside counsel Richard Vale, marked draft only, never sent. Subject line: post-Christmas options. The body listed 3 action items. Present concern footage from dinner. Use Claire's finance obsession to support instability narrative. Remove her from trust oversight before quarter-end review. Underneath it, Ryan had replied from his phone because Ryan was careless with urgency. If she blows up in front of the baby, we're done here. Tessa let out a breath like glass breaking. She stood up so fast her chair hit the floor behind her. You told me this was about donor complaints. Ryan wheeled toward her. Sit down. No. It was the first honest word anyone else had spoken all evening. My mother turned on her. Tessa, this is not your moment. Tessa laughed once, shocked into it. No, Helena, apparently it was Leo's. Ryan pointed at me with a shaking hand. You set us up. I held his gaze. Actually, you set yourselves up. I just preserved the footage. Ethan finally found some heat. You were spying on your own family. You were building a case to take my son. You are not fit to. Finish that sentence, I said calmly. Please. He didn't. I let the implications settle over the room the way Miriam had taught me to do in negotiations. Silence is not empty when people know what comes next. Silence is structure. Then I swiped to the last page in Owen's summary packet and turned the screen so all of them could read the header. Prepared for Sloan Avery LLP. My mother actually swayed. Not much. An inch. But enough. Who, my father said slowly, is Sloan Avery? The firm you'll be meeting tomorrow at 10. Ryan barked. We're not meeting anyone. I looked at him. You are. Bring personal counsel. Not Richard Vale. He'll need his own. Paige stared at me as if she just remembered I existed outside family gossip and holiday seating charts. You can't seriously be doing this on Christmas Eve. I'm serious enough to do it on Christmas Eve. My mother gathered herself in stages, smoothing her blouse, lifting her chin, arranging tone before content. Claire, whatever you think you have, dragging this into public channels will destroy the family. I picked up Leo's bottle from beside the high chair and tested it against my wrist. Still warm. No, I said. What you did will destroy the family. I'm just making sure the right people get credit. Ryan's laugh came out ragged. You self-righteous little. Ryan, I cut in, if you raise your voice at me again after putting your hand on my child, I'll skip tomorrow and file tonight. He went silent. That was the moment the room shifted. Not because they agreed with me. Not because guilt appeared. People like that don't transform in candlelight. The shift came because they realized they had misjudged scale. They thought they had cornered a frightened daughter, a tired mother, a woman they'd made small through repetition. What they were looking at instead was a witness holding documentation. I packed the tablet away. Wrapped Leo's blanket around him more securely. Reached for the diaper bag. Ethan took half a step toward me. Claire, don't be ridiculous. We need to talk privately. We won't. You can't take Leo and walk out like this. I looked at him, really looked at him, at the expensive watch on his wrist, the controlled panic behind his eyes, the familiar face that had slept beside me for years while building language to erase me. I can, I said. And I am. My father stood. If you leave this house tonight under these circumstances, Claire, don't expect this family to forgive you. I adjusted Leo against my shoulder. That only matters if I ask. No one answered. At the entry hall, beneath the brass sconces and the framed winter watercolor, my mother moved between rooms every December because she thought it made the house look heritage. I stopped long enough to turn back. Tenim, I said. Sloane Avery. Park Avenue. Anne Ryan. He looked up. Next time you feel a need to discipline someone, I said evenly, try a mirror. Then I left. They thought they had a shaky family video and a frightened mother. They had no idea I'd spent nearly 3 months building the timeline that would pull every hidden thread loose. The next morning Manhattan looked like it had been lacquered and cold. By 9:30 Park Avenue was all reflective glass and winter light, the sidewalks crowded with people carrying garment bags, pastry boxes, and the exhausted elegance of expensive holiday mornings. Sloane Avery occupied the top 3 floors of a limestone building with brass revolving doors, black-veined marble in the lobby, and the kind of quiet that only exists in places where billing starts the moment you breathe. I arrived first. Miriam had told me to. Power likes to enter rooms that are already arranged around it, she said the night before, while I sat in her office feeding Leo from a bottle under a shaded brass lamp. You'll be there when they arrive. Let them feel that. So I was there at 9:35 in a charcoal wool dress, low heels, hair pulled back, Leo at home with my neighbor and part-time sitter, Mrs. Donnelly, who had once been a neonatal nurse and trusted me enough not to ask unnecessary questions. I wore no jewelry except my wedding band, which I planned to remove after the meeting, not before. Let Ethan see the full shape of his own timing. Let him understand that even my symbols had been deliberate. The conference room Miriam chose overlooked the avenue through tall windows trimmed in dark steel. A slab walnut table ran nearly the length of the room. The leather chairs were oxblood and firm. Water sat in heavy crystal carafes beside lined legal pads and fountain pens aligned with exacting symmetry. Winter sun fell across the wood in pale silver bands. It was a room built to make people hear themselves more clearly than they wanted. Miriam stood near the window in a black suit with a silk blouse the color of wet stone, flipping through a bound presentation packet. Owen sat at the far end of the table, laptop open, printer, toner and cedar as always. Beside him was a younger associate named Priya Raman, sharp-eyed, immaculate, and already terrifying in the way new litigators sometimes are before life teaches them restraint. A digital recorder sat in the middle of the table. Any changes overnight? Miriam asked without preamble. Ethan texted 11 times, I said. Ryan twice. My mother left one voicemail. My father emailed at 6:14 a.m. to say we were making a regrettable mistake. Good, Miriam said. Save all of it. I handed Priya my phone. She plugged it in and began exporting. At 9:58 the assistant at the door said, They're here. Miriam closed the presentation binder. Let them wait 30 seconds, she said. We did. It was a small cruelty. Necessary. Time expands when people are scared and try not to show it. When the doors finally opened, the contrast between Christmas Eve and that room was almost elegant. Ryan came in first anyway because habit survives humiliation for a while. But the swagger was gone. He wore a camel overcoat over a dark suit that fit too tightly across the shoulders, and he moved with the contained aggression of a man who hadn't slept and had told himself anger would restore him. Ethan followed in a navy coat, face drawn and neat as if grooming might still matter. My mother entered in pearl gray cashmere with sunglasses she removed too slowly, buying herself seconds. My father came behind her, older than he had looked under candlelight, one hand briefly touching the back of a chair before he sat. Paige was there, pale and visibly regretting visibility. Tessa came in last. Alone. No ring on her left hand. And with them, to my surprise and then not at all, came Richard Vale. Richard had been the family's lawyer since before I was old enough to spell fiduciary. He was 70, silver-haired, beautifully tailored, and had spent decades giving my father the kind of legal comfort men purchase when they intend never to encounter consequence personally. He entered with the contained displeasure of someone forced to meet a version of the facts he had hoped to manage. Miriam smiled as if greeting old weather. Richard, she said, you may wish to reconsider your seat. He frowned. Excuse me. Potential witness. Possible subject. We'll know in 15 minutes. Best not to create conflicts before breakfast. Ryan snapped. This is absurd. Miriam looked at him the way surgeons look at shouting. No, she said. This is documented. No one sat for a second. Then chairs moved almost all at once, leather creasing, coat sleeves whispering, pens rolling slightly on polished wood. The sounds were small and expensive. The atmosphere of authority did half the work before any of us spoke. Rooms like that have gravity. People either rise to it or reveal they were never substantial enough to begin with. Miriam pressed the recorder button. For the record, she said, this meeting is being documented with the consent of all parties present, which was a condition of attendance communicated this morning. If anyone objects, you may leave now and we proceed by filing. No one left. Good, she said. My client is Claire Elise Marlowe Bennett. Today's meeting concerns 3 related matters. First, assault of a minor child on December 24th. Second, conspiracy to manufacture false evidence in support of an emergency custody action. Third, financial misconduct involving the Marlowe House Foundation and associated trust vehicles. Ryan let out a harsh breath. Conspiracy. You've got to be kidding. Miriam turned one page in her binder. Mr. Marlowe, if you interrupt again before I finish my opening statement, you'll do it outside. He fell back into his chair. Not willingly, but fully. My mother tried a softer route. Miriam, I'm sure Claire is upset, but this tone is. Mrs. Marlowe, Miriam said, your voice appears on one of the recordings we'll be discussing. You may want to conserve your adjectives. Priya slid a packet to each seat. Tabbed. Index. Cream paper. Clean black type. No theatrics. Real danger rarely needs decoration. I had read every page twice. Still, seeing Ryan's name in a litigation-ready binder gave me a cold, exact satisfaction. Miriam began with the timeline. September 14th, she said, Claire Marlowe Bennett, then serving as acting compliance counsel for the Marlowe House Foundation before formal maternity leave, flags duplicate media expenditures paid to Alder and Ash Strategies and North Channel Outreach. Both vendors appear in grant-adjacent donor cultivation lines. Neither entity has corresponding deliverables. Ryan shifted. Ethan's jaw set. September 19th, Miriam continued. An override authorization is entered from Mr. Ethan Bennett's credentials approving a second wire to North Channel Outreach in the amount of $82,000. Attached service memo is backdated. Ethan spoke without lifting his eyes from the packet. That's a clerical issue. Owen finally looked up. It's a wire fraud issue. Miriam went on. October 3rd. Text exchange between Ryan Marlowe and Helena Marlowe discussing, quote, shaking Claire loose before quarter close, and making sure her finance obsession reads as stress, not substance. My mother's fingers tightened around her pen. October 28th, Miriam said, 2 nights at the Mercer Hotel billed to donor relations. Guests, Ethan Bennett and Vanessa Cole. Ethan looked up sharply then. Not at me. At the door. Miriam noticed. Of course she noticed. November 6th, she said, draft emergency parenting memorandum prepared on a device used by Ethan Bennett and routed through communications staff for tone softening. It describes Ms. Bennett as unstable, paranoid regarding foundation finances, and in need of supervised visitation. Richard Vale finally interjected. A draft memo proves nothing unless you can establish intent to file. Priya slid a single sheet toward him. Would a calendar hold with family part Judge Feldman's clerk help? Richard's face went blank in a way that only lawyers understand. Not surprise. Calculation. Miriam nodded to Priya, who handed out the calendar printout. December 26th. 8:30 a.m. Confidential urgency consult minor child. Requested by Vale. My father turned to Richard so slowly it was almost graceful. You told me no papers were prepared. Richard removed his glasses. No papers were filed. Yet, I said. He didn't look at me. Miriam kept going because momentum is mercy only for the innocent. December 2nd, she said, internal planning messages reference Christmas Eve seating placements, with specific mention that cousin Paige Holloway would have clear visual access from the hallway. Quote, if Claire lunges, make sure someone clean gets it. Paige made a sound like she'd been slapped herself. I didn't know what it was for. Ryan rounded on her. Then stop reacting like that. Paige stared at him, eyes suddenly wet. You told me she'd been scaring people. You never asked which people, I said. The room tightened again. Miriam took one sip of water and moved to the next tab. Deliberate slowness. That was one of her gifts. She didn't rush toward impact. She laid it out piece by piece until denial had nowhere to stand. December 11th, she said. Claire's dormant compliance account is accessed from Ethan Bennett's work laptop using an old credential pair. Decoy files prepared by Mr. Mercer are opened, exported, printed, and later presented at Christmas dinner as evidence of embezzlement. Printer logs, access metadata, and keystroke sequencing are attached. Ryan's head snapped toward Ethan. You told me you verified those. Ethan kept his eyes on the packet. I verified what I was given. You created what you were given, Owen said. My father closed the packet. Enough, he said, his voice low and dangerous now that his name wasn't the first one on the page. What is the point of this meeting? Miriam folded her hands. The point, Mr. Marlowe, is that your family staged a false instability event against my client, used a child as leverage, attempted to manufacture financial culpability, and exposed the foundation to regulatory and criminal review. The point is to determine whether you want to resolve the civil, custody, and governance components before law enforcement and the State Attorney General's Charities Bureau receive everything. The silence that followed was not empty. It had weight. Like a door ceiling. Ryan shoved back from the table so hard his chair rolled into the credenza. This is extortion. No, Miriam said. Extortion asks for something not already owed. My mother finally lost polish. You sanctimonious little. Claire, do you really think burning down your own family makes you noble? I turned to her. No. I think protecting my son makes me necessary. She laughed once, harsh and unfamiliar. Your son. As if you're the only one who loves him. You're the only person in that room who asked for him to be used, I said. Her lips parted. Closed. For the first time in my life, Helena Marlowe had no immediate line ready. It suited her less than she thought. Richard reached for one of the tabs, scanning fast now, professional instinct overtaking loyalty. Where, he said carefully, did these communications originate? Miriam smiled slightly. I wondered when you'd ask. She pressed the intercom button on the table. Please send Ms. Cole in. The door opened less than 10 seconds later. Vanessa walked in wearing a black wool dress, low boots, and a cream coat she removed before taking the empty chair near Priya. Her hair was pulled back. No gloss. No performance. She looked tired but not weak. There's a difference. When Ryan saw her, the color left his face in a clean sweep. Ethan's reaction was worse. His body went rigid all at once, as if each muscle had independently realized betrayal was possible from both directions. He said. Vanessa didn't look at him. He looked at Miriam. Miriam nodded once. Ms. Cole is here voluntarily. She has provided source devices, email archives, reimbursement backups, and recorded instructions relating to the donor-vendor scheme and the December 24th setup. My mother's voice came out thin. Vanessa, whatever grievance you have with Ethan. This isn't a grievance, Vanessa said. It's documentation. Ryan stared at her. You were in those meetings because we trusted you. Vanessa finally looked at him then, and there was something almost calm in her face that made the next line land harder. That was your first mistake, she said. Your second was assuming I'd let you frame me for fake vendors after Ethan billed our hotel weekends to a pediatric charity. Tessa covered her mouth with her hand. Paige looked between Vanessa and Ethan like she was watching a building lean. Ethan found his anger. You were involved in approvals. In message shaping, Vanessa said. Not wire instructions. Not shell companies. Not your midnight edits. And not this. She turned a sheet in the packet to face him. One of the text exchanges he'd sent her after promising to leave me. Once Christmas gives us the leverage, Claire won't be in a position to fight. Then we reset everything. He actually reached for the page. Reflex. It stopped halfway. Miriam said, Miss Cole came to my client when she realized two things. First, that she was being prepared as the sacrificial comms employee if the vendor trail was reviewed. Second, that your plan involved provoking a mother through her infant child. Vanessa's jaw tightened. I'm not proud of how long it took me. But yes. Ryan rounded on Ethan. You said she was handled. I said she was staying quiet. And you believed him, I said softly. No one answered me. They were too busy turning on each other now, which was always the likely ending. Groups built on shared harm don't collapse gracefully. They splinter along old resentments the minute consequence appears. My father shoved his packet away. I want separate counsel. There it is, Miriam said. Ryan stood again. Dad, sit down. We do not need separate counsel. We need to stop letting her put on this show. Tessa said, sudden and clear. She had been silent almost the entire meeting, but now she leaned forward, both palms flat on the walnut table, wedding ring gone, eyes fixed on Ryan with a level of disgust I recognized because I had worn it myself. You hit her, baby. Ryan scoffed. Oh, please. No, Tessa said. No, don't you dare do that voice with me. I watched you do it. And I watched your mother call it a pressure point. And if you think I'm going to walk into a car with you after hearing that recording, you've lost your mind. Ryan's face twisted. You're overreacting. Tessa laughed. The sound was small, incredulous. That line really works for you, doesn't it? My mother snapped. Tessa, this is a family matter. Tessa turned to her with startling steadiness. Exactly. That's why I'm done being polite about it. Paige pushed her chair back next, eyes red now, mascara slightly smudged at the corners. I wanted on record that I didn't know he was going to hit Leo. Priya made a note without emotion. It's on record. I thought they were doing some kind of intervention, Paige said, voice breaking. I thought Claire had found something in the accounts and they were worried she'd go public because she was exhausted or angry or, I don't know. That's what I was told. My father closed his eyes for 1 second. It aged him 10 years. Ryan whipped toward Ethan again. Say something. Ethan was beyond smooth by then. Fear had gotten into him. His collar looked too tight. He kept swallowing between sentences. This is all being spun, he said. Yes, I was trying to protect Leo. Yes, I was concerned Claire was becoming fixated. That doesn't mean. I interrupted him for the first time that morning. You booked a courtroom consult before speaking to me once. His eyes cut to mine. Because you stopped being rational. I held his gaze. I stopped agreeing with you. That hung in the room longer than I expected. Miriam turned another page. There is one more issue before we discuss terms. The trust amendment. My father looked up sharply. What trust amendment? That one even Ryan hadn't expected. His expression gave it away before the document hit the table. Owen slid forward 3 pages with signature blocks. On December 9th, he said, a draft amendment to the Marlowe Family Oversight Trust was prepared removing Claire Bennett as contingent co-trustee over foundation governance during any period of documented psychological instability or marital litigation. My father stared at Ryan. Then at Ethan. Then at my mother. Helena said too quickly, it was precautionary. Charles's voice went flat as steel. You moved against trust control without my signature. Ryan lifted his hands. It wasn't finalized. No, Owen said, tapping the page, because the notary you intended to use contacted us yesterday. Ryan went white. I hadn't known Owen could produce silence like that with a single sentence. But there was. Clean and total. Even Miriam let it sit. My mother turned slowly toward Ryan. You used Marjorie. Ryan snapped. How was I supposed to know the old woman would panic? It took my father a moment to stand, but when he did, the entire room felt smaller. You involved staff in trust alteration. Ryan straightened too, matching height because some sons remain adolescent in the presence of fathers forever. Don't do that. Don't stand there and act horrified now. You wanted her out. All of you did. No one told you to forge governance papers, Charles said. Ryan gave a short, disbelieving laugh. No, you just spent years telling me I'd lose everything if she ever got control of the board. That landed too. Not because it surprised me. Because my father didn't deny it. Families like mine don't tell the truth in grand confessions. They leak it in moments of blame. Miriam closed the binder. I believe we're at the useful part now, she said. Here are the terms. Priya distributed the agreement packet. Thick. Heavier than the earlier binder. Settlement architecture, custody stipulations, resignations, board actions, admissions. The paper itself seemed denser. Miriam spoke with the same tone she might have used to discuss weather. Term 1. Ethan Bennett will withdraw any contemplated emergency custody filings and consent to temporary primary physical custody with Claire Bennett pending formal divorce proceedings, with supervised visitation only until completion of a child safety evaluation and anger management review. Given his participation in the setup, that review will include parenting judgment. Ethan shoved the packet away. Absolutely not. Miriam didn't blink. Then we file by noon. On what basis? Fraud, coercive control, evidentiary fabrication, and conspiracy to provoke an incident involving a minor. Family court judges tend to dislike that. He looked at Richard. Richard said nothing. Term 2, Miriam continued. Ryan Marlowe resigns immediately from all foundation roles, executes a civil admission regarding contact with Leo Bennett on December 24, pays associated medical and therapy costs, and consents to referral of the matter to a private restorative process or criminal complaint at my client's discretion. Ryan laughed too loudly. You think I'm signing an admission for a tap? Use whatever word helps you sleep, I said. The video uses another. His eyes flashed to mine, then away. Term 3, Miriam said. Helena Marlowe and Charles Marlowe support emergency governance review, appoint an independent forensic audit team, and publicly announce temporary withdrawal from donor-facing leadership pending results. My mother's face hardened. Publicly? Yes. You want to humiliate us? No, Miriam said. We want to correct a false public image before regulators discover you preferred private fiction. My father read fast now, old instincts returning in service of survival. And if we don't? Owen answered this time. Attorney General. IRS Charities Division. Board members. Donor Council. Press, if necessary. Paige made a choking sound. Press. Priya looked at her. You should speak to your own lawyer before anyone asks for your footage. Paige's hands started shaking. Term 4, Miriam said. The family retains no further involvement in any narrative concerning Claire Bennett's mental stability, parenting capacity, or financial conduct. Retraction language will be drafted today. Ryan scoffed. You can't control private opinions. No, Miriam said. But I can control what becomes defamation after this meeting. Term 5, Priya added. Vanessa Cole receives limited witness cooperation terms in exchange for full device access and testimony regarding internal comms, provided she continues cooperating and any independent misconduct remains limited to non-financial messaging acts already disclosed. Vanessa nodded once. That was the deal we had worked out after many hours and one brutal conversation in which I told her very plainly that helping me did not erase her choices with Ethan. She had met that truth without flinching. Strange as it is to say now, that was the first reason I believed we might one day become something other than enemies by circumstance. Ryan turned to me with raw disbelief. You're protecting her. I folded my hands on the table. I'm protecting useful truth. He stared. You always had to be the smartest person in the room. I considered that. Then I said, no.